used to those. Okay, you ready to go?
Ready.
All right. Well, good evening, both those of you here on site and virtually through Zoom. Such a great addition to our ability to communicate. We called the town hall meeting after many requests to really cover and discuss where we are as far as establishing a new site for the school. So, of course, you will probably recognize Chelsea Parker, who is our chair for the Charter Council, Jennifer Brand, who is a Waldorf trained teacher, has been here for a long time, 14 years, and is currently teaching 7th grade. Myself is the executive director, and then later you will meet Charity May from Turner Impact. She will talk later on in the agenda more on where we are, their role, and where we are in the process. Really, the purpose of this evening is to share information on how we came to where we are, and either answer or collect questions. The assessment of the property that I have promised has not been completed yet, just because of timing and so on. And again, Charity can address more of that. But we wanted to get some of the initial information out and then really collect what questions you might have left for us as we move forward. So that way, if we have those questions ahead of time, we can be prepared when we talk to the experts about the site and about moving forward. So a couple of ground rules. First one is to assume good intent, that everybody involved in this conversation and at the school intends to find a good and appropriate place for Blue Oak to live for the long term. I'm also going to ask that you remain with questions and not statements or comments. That is the format of this. So if you think of something you want to say, think of Jeopardy, that I put it in a question form, and go from there. Because that's really our purpose, is to get those questions out on the table that we have. Okay, so we have the panel discussion. We've introduced the members, and I'm going to talk. Each of us will talk for a while, and then and explain what we've got going. And then at the bottom, we'll have time for questions. We've also established a Google survey, so people who are not able to attend and can watch the video later can add their questions to that Google document, and we can address through digitally those questions. So I'm going to start. Once upon a time, 2016, from what I understand, the district proposed Measure K to the voters of the district, the Chico district. And in that was funding for all schools, for buildings. So the charters at the time and the leaders at that time of the charter world worked really hard to make sure that a percentage of that funding went to charter schools. They were successful, and about 15% of it is allocated to charters. Of that 15%, each of the charters was given a percentage based on their enrollment at the time. So we have Inspire, which many of you know had a chunk of money. We had a chunk of money, and so on. Inspire spent a lot of their money on new portables and things like that. Blue Oak has spent some money. These beautiful black chairs that you're sitting in, with one of them. They are for the music department. You can see the stands in the music room. Purchase technology, things like that. For us, it always has to be something, because we're in a rented building, it always needs to be something that we can move to a new site whenever. So we had to make sure, for example, we put in the playground equipment with Measure K. We have to make sure that that's something that we can move to a new site. So of course we engineered it that way. So that's the Measure K. We still have a little over 3 million in that pot. And the reason, and I think we're the only ones left with much. And the reason was because we really wanted to invest that money in a new site. So, and Jennifer will talk about into what really started back then as far as looking for what kind of a site that we wanted at that time. In Measure K, we need to, everything needs to be approved not only by us, but by the district. And they continue to have ownership of anything we buy with that money. So for example, if we buy laptops, there's a little label on those laptops that says this is actually the property of Chico Unified, purchased by Measure K funds and kept here. And so that if it comes back, if there's some reasons it's returned, it goes through that process. So that's part of the Measure K funds. The second piece to know about is our SB 740, and that is a section of funds specifically for charters for facilities, and it can be used for rent and for repairs. Most of it goes to rent these days. So that is also part of our funding structure that goes through the finance committee every year, receiving that and spending it on fully on rent at this time here. So those are two major things to think about as far as our current funding for buildings. And again, Charity will talk more about the process as far as actually purchasing a new site and where we are with that. The last thing I wanted to talk about a bit was our current home here at 450 West East Avenue. This was once an insurance payments processing center. Still have the same carpet that they had when it was insurance payment processing center. Still have enough tiles that when they get torn, we could pull up the old top square and put it in a new one. But this building was really taken from that structure and the classrooms added in order to make this a school. Long term, there have been concerns about the lack of outdoor space where we can actually have grass. If you drive around the building or if you look at the building, there's some beautiful areas of grass. All of them are right next to a parking lot, which is really not the way that we would want to have students playing. So if you notice, if you're here during the day, you'll see that the upper grades do go outside, the lower grades do not. And for that very reason, because of the spacing. So I could go on about the concerns of the building, the HVACs and so on, but basically we looked at the site, thought seriously about purchasing it, worked for a while, and have still gone back and talked to the owners, but have not been able to get all the parties to agree on what the repairs need to be for the school to actually purchase it, what the price should be, and so on. So that's basically my piece. And oh, I also got to say this. I've listed the virtues that we teach children here: reverence, courage, wisdom, friendship, and compassion. And as we move forward, let's make sure that we are thinking in terms of how we're acting as far as those virtues go. Okay.
Isn't there a people trying to log on and I'm waiting for that host to all right. Had it hold up in a weird spot. It's visible now. Thank you.
Sure. I can just go. I'll go a little more briefly over what I just said. Then are we good, Alex? Okay. So, main purpose of this meeting is to share information and to answer or collect questions for future meetings. Our ground rules are assume good intent, only ask questions. So I use the Jeopardy analogy, and remember the provoke virtues that we teach to children here. I talked about the Measure K funds that a process through the district that started in 2016 and how we access that money. SB 740, which is a grant we have to help us with facilities costs and some of the issues around our current home. Okay, so from there, I will turn it over to Jennifer to talk about the early steps of this process.
Good evening, everyone. So before I start about where we began looking at a new facility, I just want to provide a little bit of biographical context of what brought us here to this facility. And that goes all the way back to 2009 when our school was at Moss Avenue over by In Motion Fitness. We were renting part of a church and we were a single track school. There were very few other charter schools in the area, and our wait lists had grown so large, and our school as in itself had grown so large that when an opportunity came up for us to find a new space, it behooved us to consider suddenly becoming a double track school. And in 2010, I believe, thank you, we came here, and the classes that were single tracked at the old site through a lottery or through teacher discernment were unzipped half and half, and our staff doubled in 1 year, and we brought in as many new families as we could. And that is how our biography began on this site. We never reached full capacity of a double track school. We have not in our entire history here achieved 4 kindergartens, let alone 3, and then 2 first grades through 8th grades. We got close, and then as soon as we started to get there, we grew down again. And that simultaneously happened really intensely in the last 4 years when we have been doing this work of thinking about our sustainable future. So we knew that we were renters here in this building. We've been paying exorbitant rent for this building. And what started out as a really amazing opportunity to have so much space, Susan hinted at it, the lack of natural environment has just been crucial as a negative impact to our pedagogy. We are one of the only Waldorf schools that are not an urban school to not have land. So if you think about being in Seattle or San Francisco or New York City, you might have a very urban setting, but you also have access to tremendous parks nearby in the way that system works. Our curriculum craves natural beauty, a connection with nature, and more space and freedom for the children. We also, how this started in 2016 is we were looking at buying this building and what if we were to remodel this building. And we had a consultant come. They conducted a needs assessment. We had surveys that went out to the parent community, the staff, the teachers. A huge collaborative effort went into designing what our school could look like right here. And then we understood that that was not going to be an option given the owners of the property. And so we started looking into if money wasn't a factor, where could we go? And multiple sites were looked into about 7 years ago, prior to the campfire, prior to COVID, when most of our junior high children were in the primary grades. So this might feel like a really long time ago. And a couple key sites that we were really narrowing in on just to bring it back to your attention if you forgot or you just weren't here yet to know. There was a site over by Life Touch Photography close to Highway 99. It backed up to beautiful greenery connected to a creek that also connected to Durham-Dayton Highway. But because the lands were considered marshlands, that wouldn't be feasible for us to build a school. We also, at that time, were strongly looking into the site that became Chico, that was Chico Christian. They were selling. We were attempting to move into where Core currently is, and that wasn't an option. Core bought that property, built on that property, has created their beautiful, sustainable future there. We also were strongly looking into another property off of Humboldt. That was a lot that was potential through Chico Unified, but within the last 7 years, that has shifted in its availability and going to other schools within the district and their development. And finally, the lot there at there were two more options. One was Miriam Park, before Miriam Park really developed in the past 5 years. Miriam Park at that time was selling for $15 a square foot without infrastructure, just the purchasing of the land. And that was far beyond our budget. The other lot we were really looking at was at the end of East 20th, past the Doe Mill neighborhood, where the bike trails connect parallel to Skyway. And they were looking at developing that in the future to have about 15,000 acres of developed homes and such. And they wanted a double tracked charter school out there. So that was our dream position. There was also another opportunity off of Skyway where there was a driving range, but that was too much traffic. A lot of that went on pause and hold once the campfire hit and once COVID occurred. Meanwhile, work was still being done with Measure K. And really just in the last couple of years, our facilities meeting has revisited this with a new opportunity with the Turner Charter Impact with, I'm sorry, Charity, I'm messing up her name. Charity May with the Charter Impact.
Turner Impact.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But so anyway, this has really come up as this new opportunity, and Charity will talk more about this of how do we then, how can we do this as a school as we're growing down and creating a sustainable future where teachers don't have to worry about their classes combining with other grade levels, that we have class families that are developed strong and beautifully and heartily in the lower grades, and they're staying consistent with roots growing down deep, and our school as a whole in a community thinking beyond just the next semester or just the next year or just the next natural disaster. Where are we as a community really being strong and vibrant and standing on our own 2 feet? So with this past spring during COVID, in our second year, so during our hybrid year, not during the complete shutdown. I'm sorry, no, the first year, 2 years ago was hybrid. Last year was on-site. Last year during the on-site year, that's when our facilities committee really came back together and started working on this. A lot of the details about possible sites was discussed during closed session at board meetings because of just that, which Susan or our charter council can speak to. But the committee itself was a public committee, and agendas were posted and community members were welcome to come in. And one of the most exciting things that we developed last year was a full collaborative document with the entire staff, admin, and faculty as well, and what are all of the necessary components for a sustainable school in the future. So do our kindergarten teachers really need to be using an electric grill plate for their kindergarten soup, or can we make sure they have a little stove for their cooking? And can there be a garden right outside the 3rd grade classroom? And how do we incorporate the science lab? And what does a performing arts center look like combined with our games program? And really looking then at what can we do within the parameters of the lot at the time that we were considering, which was up to 2 acres. And so later on in this meeting, I'll discuss more about potential building design elements that, whether this current plan proceeds or not, is a really exciting opportunity for us and for the children.
Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Parker. Currently, I am the chair of the Charter Council. I joined the Charter Council in 2018. For those of you who don't know me, prior to that, I was an employee and the staff representative on the Finance Committee from 2015 till 2018 when I stepped on the council. Prior to that, I was actually a Blue Oak parent from 2014 up until last year. So I've been part of the school for a long time and have been part of this process for a long time. I know Jennifer talked a lot about kind of the process we've been through so far. From that point where she left off, when the facilities committee kind of created this package of what we're looking for, what the sustainable options are, kind of what size, where that handoff then comes to the Charter Council, where we were tasked with actually working with real estate agents, actually seeking out sites that were available. And we began working with Turner Impact, who, if you're not familiar with the way school funding works, it's tricky to get any sort of privatized loan. Turner Impact, sorry, one of the big things they do is also help with the funding process. So they are experts, and I know Charity May will talk more about this shortly, but that's what they do. They find sites, they build charter schools, and they help with funding sources. So we were so excited then to take the information that was turned over to us from the facilities committee, move forward with Turner Impact, and began discussing more specific site locations. So we knew that as we were looking for a new school site, we had two options, and that is either a retrofit, so similar to what was done with this building, taking a building that already exists and doing construction and creating, hopefully, what we need out of it. And then the other option, varying types of new builds, be it portable buildings or like actual ground up buildings. And we did look at several sites for both of those options. A few of the sites that we looked at were primarily, like for the retrofit, were primarily because of the size needs of our school and property, commercial spaces. And if you're familiar with Chico, the commercial spaces aren't in neighborhoods. So that left us with limited design options and locations. Some of the spaces that we looked at that fit our criteria for availability and size were the Enterprise Record Building, at the Exercise Club building that was, I believe, North State Fitness. Before that, Kangaroo Courts, if you're a longtime Chico person. Another building was the Cal State building. Each of these buildings, and those are some of the ones that we considered more seriously. There were other buildings that were brought to our attention that were either in locations that we deemed not easily accessible or not particularly safe for a school. And so those were the ones that we dug into, and for varying reasons, either budgetary or location challenges, be it busy streets or commercial areas, we opted not to proceed with those. Some of the locations that we explored for new builds was a property out near the airport that was right under the flight path of the Chico Airport. Miriam Park, we revisited that area, not just the actually within Miriam Park, but the area across from there as well. And the Henshaw area nearby over here near where Henshaw Park is. And those also, Miriam Park and Henshaw were not available to us as a school. Other vacant properties that we looked at, like the one near the airport, also, even though it was listed for sale, it was slated for development for a different type of business. And so they were selling it, but only to somebody who had that type of business, so not to the school. And we found that in many of the open lot locations around town. Some of the key things that we were looking for as we were looking for a site to build on was being in a neighborhood instead of being in a more commercial or industrial area of Chico. Accessibility for families from multiple communities, such as Orville, Paradise, Forest Ranch, Durham, and then the potential for what that site could offer, not just in the immediate term, but down the road as well as we continue to develop it, and whether or not it was a good fit for a school. We did find these things at the location that we proposed. And in addition to the things that we were looking for, one of the other things that we found in this location was the opportunity for a multi-generational partnership with the retirement assisted living facility that was neighboring that. And so that was a really exciting opportunity because, you know, so much of Waldorf is serving and partnering and relationship building with the community around. So that was a really exciting prospect. The location is accessible to families. There is, you know, clearly not fully, the infrastructure is not fully developed in that area yet because the road's not even developed yet. However, that area is slated for neighborhoods. And so that was really exciting to be in an opportunity, you know, have the opportunity to be a school in a neighborhood versus being surrounded by parking lots and industrial buildings. So I want to assure everybody that as Jennifer spoke to, this has not been a quick search. The search began shortly after I was hired at Blue Oak. As a board and as the people who have been involved in this process, we don't feel like we've settled in moving forward with this proposed location. We also, well, we determined that this location offers the things we're looking for within our price range, and we decided to move forward in the next steps, which includes reestablishing the facilities committee to do the work of really digging in, doing any sort of design work, looking at any of the site surveys and such, and determining the school layout in conjunction with the architects and designers from Turner Impact. Throughout the process, we've also worked closely with Chico Unified, who has also offered their preliminary support with this location. And with that, I want to say also that in moving forward with this, we have not purchased this. We have not agreed to purchase this. We are taking the steps, the due diligence steps in exploring this site as a viable option. As I said in my introduction, I've been part of the school for a long time. I personally always held myself to a high standard and operated with the highest level of integrity. As the board chair, I have led the board to do the same. And I just want to reiterate what Susan started the meeting with is in assuming the best intentions, because I do assure you that everybody that has been part of this process from 2016 to current and before, and those who I'm sure will come after, that has always been our intention, is the best interest of the students and the school.
Time to introduce Charities.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea and Jennifer and Susan and the rest of the Blue Oak community. This is an honor. It's an honor for me to be here representing Turner Impact Capital, and more specifically, our mission under the Turner Agassiz Education Facilities Fund. I want to first acknowledge that I'm not with you in person. So thank you for letting me join you in Zoom from Ohio, which is where I currently am, but I usually sit in Southern California, and we'll be back in the next 7 days. So looking forward to being close by to be able to be in person for any future discussions and events related to this. Before I provide some comments on where we are in the current progress as it relates to this site, I wanted to just first spend a minute to introduce Turner Impact and elaborate a little further on what Chelsea has shared, as well as Susan, just for setting some context. So Turner Impact Capital has been dedicated and committed to focusing on real estate solutions for socially enriching infrastructure. So most specifically, we are committing our real estate expertise and experience to the development of educational institutions, healthcare facilities, and preserving workforce housing That is our passion, our mission, and any moment that we have an opportunity to partner in any form or capacity with the ones that are on the ground doing the work, such as Blue Oak Charter School and the members in this room, we are very grateful for that opportunity. In the work that we do, we can serve as a turnkey facility solutions provider. So at any stage in the development process, we can bring our expertise and our team of members, including construction service management members who have been in the construction space for many years and have worked on many different types of projects. So over the 120 schools that we've developed since 2011, you can imagine that we have seen a lot of different challenges, ups and downs and wins as it relates to the work of development. So it is not lost on us that it can be a very long and difficult journey to find a permanent home, but that is also why we show up to do this work every single day, because it is imperative that we do that in service to the students and families in these communities. We had the opportunity to meet with Susan during the second engagement of looking for sites, in part because we can support in the site search process, but also in securing a site for a charter school. And so where we have gotten to in looking at the Humboldt and Yosemite site that has been proposed, that really developed out of discussions with other developers in the region. As Chelsea mentioned, there was an opportunity to look at additional land that would be made available as a part of this larger development that is underway in that area, but being adjacent to senior housing development. So the opportunity to explore a multi-generational collaboration in terms of new infrastructure, but also there being mutuality in the intention and mission of that led us to present the site to the Charter Council and receive kind of the green light to continue to pursue and explore what this opportunity might look like for Blue Oak. So as it currently stands, we are at a place where, as Chelsea mentioned, we are in the process of moving towards having the site be under contract, and the critical elements related to that include having the Chico Unified School District engage in the legal discussions and negotiations on the purchase and sale agreement, which that part is underway. Once the purchase and sale agreement is signed by the Chico Unified School District, that would then begin the formal diligence timeline. And as I believe Susan has mentioned before as well, this has been the stage that we have been running a number of parallel paths, because there has been a lot of activity and development happening at that site. And we have been pursuing asking questions and gathering additional information as we work through the standard process of putting the site under contract and moving through a standard diligence process, which I will talk about a little bit later. So working with the district to move that component along is where we currently are, and in addition to those steps, follow-up will be working through the formal diligence, which is customary to our process. For Turner Impact Capital, for us to, we require a deep level of analysis and diligence for any investment that we would make in partnership with a charter school or any of the other operators that we would be partnering with. So very, very similar to any other development, the due diligence that would include phase 1 environmental site assessment, doing the necessary soils testing to ensure that any proposed design would be able to stand strong and withhold or withstand many years of use, etc. Those are all customary processes that we undergo for a contract for looking at a site to pursue it. Let me just clarify as well as it relates to the current process that prior to getting to a formal decision to close on a property, there is an extensive diligence period that during that time, in partnership with the Chico Unified School District and also Blue Oak, we would be engaging in conversations with the city to review the design related work that would be presented probably to many members that are part of this discussion as well, to move that forward in through entitlement for approval of this site. So there are a number of steps that we continue to work through and have open dialogue and communication with the Blue Oak Charter School leadership team. And every decision that is made in terms of moving forward is very collaborative. I should also mention that our model and process is very transparent and open book with the leadership that we come alongside to support. So with that, I will pause before I get too far into discussing next steps and pass it back to Jennifer, the next item.
Hello again, everyone. So as I mentioned, we began that collaborative document last spring looking at our potential site and what things would be important to us. As it came up that the potential site that our school as a whole was considering was a 2-acre lot, and looking at how much land or outdoor space we would like to utilize in that, we began discussing the opportunity of building up versus out, which isn't as common in California as it is in other parts of the United States. Makes me think back to Wayside Story chapter books when I was a kid. So in any case, we began thinking about a 2-story building when we were first looking at the Fit One gym as an opportunity. Like, how can we transform that building? We continued that line of thinking when we were looking at the Cal Skate property, because we'd have to build onto the current site. And when we thought about 2 acres, what can we do? Can we have an outdoor amphitheater for our plays and our Mayfair? Can we have a separate kindergarten space and garden parking lot that is not street side? Nice outdoor eating areas. How can we have all of our dreams come true in 2 acres? That's when we started looking at possibilities and creatively, what can we do with our new site? Some other important things that we are really taking to heart as we consider this new location are gender neutral bathrooms. That has been a big deal for us in this current site, being able to provide that access to the children who need it. We're also looking at just overall sustainability and efficiency with our electricity and our heating and our air conditioning. Summers are only getting hotter. Your ideal learning environment as a child is not too hot, not too cold. That comes with new construction, of course. And really what I want to bring back to is we have a new heart in our parent body now, which is our parent body that is post-campfire, post-COVID. You are our community now. But our community before those events, their number one thing 7 years ago was school safety. That was when shootings and Code Red was really the top concern of the parent community. And so what our committee was also taking into consideration when we're looking at these new sites is, how do we create an environment that is connected to nature and is secluded enough that we can trust as parents that our children are safe when they go to school? We're not going to choose to put them in a dangerous locale if we can, right? And then how do we balance that with universal access as a public charter school? Because as Chelsea mentioned, this site that we're looking at, what is so wonderful about it is that it's right off of the freeway. Whether you're coming from Orville or Paradise or Magalia or from different parts of Chico, you really have the opportunity to get your kids to school without that bus system in a way that a school out in the country would not provide. Because as you know, one of the criticisms of a public charter school is, oh, that's just the creme de la creme. That's just where, you know, the best of the best get to go. And you know that that's not the case, that the beauty of a charter school is it doesn't matter how much money you have or where you live. If you want an opportunity for your child and you're able to get a spot or get on a wait list or enter a lottery, that you have an equal opportunity. And we wanted our facility to reflect that. So how do we balance secluded safety as a Waldorf school, not in an urban center, with universal access physically? We were also looking at another benefit with this potential site is the collaboration with the retirement center. So not only does this current site that we're considering connect to an entirely new neighborhood development with for rent apartment to starter homes with the advantage of young families purchasing their first home, the cost of the homes within that neighborhood. It's not like we're moving into a secluded, priced out neighborhood where young families wouldn't be able to buy that house and be able to ride their bikes or walk to school. It's a really incredible opportunity to be next to a young development and all of the new families that that brings as a neighborhood school. This current site is also close to Humboldt, is parallel to Native Oak Drive, which is a street named after the oak trees that line its way down that hillside looking down over Chico. So if you're up at the potential site, you're actually looking downhill towards Marsh and you're looking downhill towards the center of Chico, and Paradise and Magalia are to your back. So it has a really expansive, peaceful environment out there. The retirement community is something that particularly excited our faculty. We used to have a close relationship with the senior housing nearby, where our children would deliver their May Day baskets to the seniors there. Back when we first started in this site, we would even have our classes go over and sing their holiday songs and provide concerts. And one of our colleagues in our Waldorf Credential program, in our master's program, her name was Alyssa Barber. She wrote her master's thesis on 8th grade Waldorf students and their reminiscence, and how incredible it is for 8th graders to have a shared experience with the biography of the elderly within a senior home community. So that was really living in our faculty too, and excited us about how we connect intergenerationally in the city of Chico. As far as the building itself, things that are important: natural materials, natural light, plenty of storage and open space so that we can achieve that, as Eugene Schwartz refers to it in The Millennial Child, clear thinking through a clear space. And that if everything has its home and has its place, the child is able to thrive with their imagination using natural materials and an orderly space. We would ideally have a school with exterior doors so that the children are not bottlenecked in the hallway for every transition. Imagine being a 6-year-old and having to walk all the way down our long hallway just to get to recess. What would it mean for that child just to be able to go outside and begin playing? And lastly, other things that we're considering and taking all into consideration in the new site is the possibility in the future of having an on-site preschool, having on-site mommy and me, really growing with the young parents as with their growing families, and taking that into consideration too. That our kindergarten program wouldn't just be a TKK, but it would be connected to the beautiful world of early Waldorf childhood development and everything that goes into that. As you know, as parents, there is so much that happens before kindergarten and so much community and learning that can take place before your child even begins school, and what we can do as a school community if we're able to host that. So as Charity mentioned, as we start to look into the next steps, that's when our committee comes back together, starts looking at staff input, faculty input, parent input, really having everyone's voice be heard on what's important to them. It's your taxpayer dollars as well as every employee's future location of work. And as with any large project in a school setting, it's a generational evolution, right? So the community we have now that began this, their children are now in middle school and almost graduating. And so a new community is stepping forward. And with that comes diversity and different priorities and a need for more collaboration and active listening. So I'm confident that we will be able to do this. Our children deserve it. And thank you for your presence here tonight, online and in person.
All right, we'll go back to Charity to talk about the next steps.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Next steps for continuing to explore the opportunity of the site and for gathering of the information and being in a position to appropriately answer any questions that may arise. We are at the beginning of initiating the formal due diligence process for this site. As I mentioned, we have a customary review process that we undergo for any opportunity that we would present and pursue to close on acquiring, and that is the due diligence, which would include environmental review, soils testing, and any other findings that may arise as we look at the viability and the feasibility of this site. So the development budget has been presented in terms of a target. And so also a part of the due diligence process is ensuring that any proposed design, but also any considerations that may arise from the reports that we engage and review would be able to be addressed appropriately within the development budget. So that's another big focus for us as we work through the due diligence process prior to getting to a place where any formal decision in terms of committing to acquiring the site would come to that place. So what that means in reality is that we are working through legal access considerations to be able to engage those reports, as I mentioned, and our team on behalf of Blue Oak, we have environmental counsel at our on our side, but also experts and folks in the field that will be conducting these reports and reviewing historical information and accounting for that as well. So with the environmental counsel, but also the engineers and environmentalists that will be conducting those reports, all of that information will be gathered during this due diligence period. The second piece to this process is ensuring that from the city's perspective, that entitlements are in place for a charter school to operate there. So while the underlying zoning does not support a school to be operating there, a conditional use permit or some sort of approval through the city would need to be obtained to as well during the due diligence process, and we would want to have that in place prior to Blue Oak and Turner and the district coming to the final decision in terms of closing on the acquisition. that entitlement process, it requires Turner and Blue Oak working closely with the district and beginning discussions with the city as it relates to the intention for the site. And so presenting that intention to them and working through their process with alongside the district to get to a place where we know that entitlements and zoning is clear and Blue Oak would be permitted to actually operate a K-8 school on that site as well. We typically run a parallel process or parallel path through these items. In many cases, due to a shortened time frame for being able to meet the deadline to pull filling permits to be able to deliver in time for students to arrive in school. So the process and the next steps for us, these items are kind of running on a parallel path as we speak. So with that, I guess I would also just add one item that's not on the agenda in terms of next steps, but also running the parallel path is the design, integrating the design elements and initiating the design review process, as Jennifer mentioned as well. And so our team, we engage an architect, we engage a general contractor to support us in supporting you, Blue Oak, in developing the design and reviewing that, approving it so that whatever is being submitted to the city, there is full agreement and the necessary concepts and schematic design elements are being accounted for appropriately. And that is a critical item for the entitlement process as well. So again, those elements will be running a parallel path as we continue forward with these next steps.
Is that it, Charity?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to suggest about a 5-minute stretch break. We've been sitting for an hour. Well, if we know, to move very much. So, and then we'll come back and just have Charities here. We'll have question and answers. I'm going to ask that no one attempt to speak for more than a minute or so because we really want to give everybody a chance. And then if you can't get your questions all asked, then you can come back around. And then we will cut it off at 7:30. Thank you. And then we still do have that Google form available for additional questions if you have them. So, about 2 after by my watch. Thanks.
You'll get there. Lou, can you turn on the cafe lights? Dane, turn on the cafe lights, please. It's the remote on the
I think I'll start with those people online to see if they have any questions as we move forward. anybody raises their hand, easiest, then we'll come back here. We have about 25 minutes for the meeting for questions.
Would it be helpful for me to do this?
Yes, it would be helpful for you to do this.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Ryan.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan, and that's Juno. We've been at the school for 5 years. I am both until recently was my class rep as well as the parent council treasurer. And so I'm fairly active in the school as well. Professionally, I'm a designer, and I'm often asked a lot of these same questions that you're wrestling with, and a lot of my decisions impact multi-million-dollar budgets kind of in the same way that you all are handling this. So a lot of this conversation really resonates with me. Two things I would love to have more clarity on. One, a lot of times in my profession, I have to make a lot of tough decisions around not compelling enough, won't solve this problem today. And that goes hand in hand with really understanding the problem statement. And so I'm wondering if either at this meeting or a future meeting, the community can better understand the problem statement. I'm hearing a lot of like to haves mixed in with a lot of need to haves. And I feel very fuzzy about what the core problem is. I just feel like through conversation around at school, maybe it's a rumor, but it seems like there's often conversation around like, for budgetary reasons, we must move. So is there any truth to that? And then why is simply not moving until a different site appears? Like how is that not one of the options? It feels like the presented options are either modify current Blue Oak or move and build, but it does feel like we're not talking about a third option, which is don't solve today. So was that a question enough, or was that too statementy?
I got it. I mean, I think that option is still there. It's just the other two come up more often. So when we say we're in the process of due diligence, then the next statement is yes or no. And if no, then we would continue to look for another site. The longer term that we wait, the higher the cost, because we are in a rental situation. The rent is generally based on cost of living. We just had a very significant cost of living increase in California. So we can expect that if we continue to stay, that cost of living that we're all feeling through the grocery store and everything else will also pass on to us.
So would you say the one key thing you're solving for is financial, or?
No, the key thing we're solving for is a long-term 30 to 50-year home for the school that actually fits the Waldorf process. And that's when you go back to 2016. And that process, that's what we've been talking about, is what is the school needs to move forward with, what will be a good home long-term for the school. This is kind of a make do, I would call it. It's not a long-term solution.
Okay. So if this proposed site ends up being not viable, essentially there's no cliff. We can continue to make do.
Yeah, and one thing, Ryan, I'll just add to that is we moved into this facility and the cost of this facility anticipating the income that a double track school would bring. And we were never able to reach that capacity of enrollment, and we have continued to grow down as a school. We've had, as you know, multiple occasions in the last 5 years of teachers losing jobs because we would start the year with a promise or an intention and enrollment would go down. And so the cost of this facility as it is, to be able to depend on this school to exist for your children, would require us to have a double track school. and the demand for a double-track Waldorf charter school in Chico is no longer there. So then our option becomes, do we take this current site and make it what we can with the owner's agreement? Do we continue to look for new opportunities? And that's where we are at now. There's not a cliff, but financially speaking, it has been very difficult in the past at least 5 years with excessive drop in enrollment.
Totally. Yeah. That sounds a little bit like a different problem to be solved, right? If that was the core problem, there would be other creative solutions to it other than new site, moving, building, yada, yada. But what you're saying is that's a component of it, but that is not the key thing you're solving.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And if we did, and again, this site can continue to operate for as many years as it needs to, essentially, while you find the ideal site.
Correct.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
We do need to work on sooner rather than later, though.
Well, that's all problems.
From the Mr. K standpoint, things like that, it's not like, oh, let's stay here for another 10 years. So we don't want to go there either.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, but there is no cliff, and if this site doesn't work out, everybody still has a job.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
This next step there, that looks like Adele.
And hold on, Adele, before you speak, can you put it on so it's speaker view so that when they lower their hand, we don't lose them on the screen?
Yeah.
I'm not sure which button that is.
Does that work?
So that, just so we can still see them. Sorry, Adele.
No, it's okay. Where do I find speaker view?
Oh, not for you. That's on our.
Oh, okay, good.
Here we go.
Okay. So my first question, and I appreciate everyone's time here. I'm new. I'm second-year kindergarten mom, and I love my Bachelor of Science is in pedagogy and learning. So Waldorf learning is a dream for me. Blue Oak is kind of a dream for us. So I appreciate what everyone's sitting here. My first question, I have quite a few, so I'll put most of them in the Google Doc, it sounds like. My first question would be, are we going to accurately and thoroughly research and discuss the history of the site, all 150 acres of it, which incorporates the proposed school site, the old dumping areas, the new construction, which I still question, proposed, and then of course the cement cap. And then my next question is about said cap.
Yes, so those are questions that Adele, that I am going to refer to our next meeting, because those are questions that the people here don't have the expertise in. I'm reaching out to environmental impact company and the city of Chico to be able to answer those questions.
Okay, and then, so given what you just said, I kind of am prioritizing questions here. I'm trying to pick which one has the highest priority. You know, I know this is probably going to get the same answer, but when it comes to measurement of these environmental impacts, and given this specific site and the environmental history it has with lead, can we have a completely third-party testing involved? And can those measurement responses be shared publicly with the parents, and the methods that were used, which I'll have more questions for in the Google Doc, are they site specific in this terms of the actual school site, the playground, and not this cumulative, here's 4 pieces and soil tests collected from each corner of the site, which then is accumulated, and here's your result of the site, when really that's not a very accurate method, but it's used commonly in the ag industry, that sort of thing. So can we ask that a completely non-biased third party do the testing, and that the results are shared with the methods to the parents? Personally, Turner Impact or real estate owners doing it doesn't feel warm and fuzzy.
I think that's a question for Charity, if she can answer it, or like you said, pass on to the next meeting.
Yes, I'm happy to answer. Thank you for your question, Adele. I appreciate your concern in terms of making sure that there is a full third-party analysis of the environmental impact of any site. That is important not only for us, but also for any of the vendors that we'd be engaging with, right? So in terms of Blue Oak being a partner in this, but also if there's any need for insurance to be put in place just to insure the property, these vendors that everyone works with, they also require an unbiased and third-party assessment. So standard to our process, we do engage third-party vendors that have history and track record within the regions to engage in an in-depth analysis of the environmental impact. And that does include, as you alluded to, that does include reviewing any historical, any of the history, other environmental reports that we may have access to, and incorporating all of that into the real-time testing that's done specifically on the site that's in question. So while there's environmental impact report on the 240 acres, there's another report on 11 acres, we will have a verified third-party report on the 2.33 acres that would be presented to Blue Oak for a decision.
And then typically, are their methods shared publicly, like how they got these results?
The methods are shared in the report, and in terms of how that report is distributed and shared with, I would say, within the Blue Oak community, that is something that we can definitely discuss in terms of how that is presented.
And what about handled? Like, what if we're like, can we actually, like, somehow you can do your method, but can we also request this method as well?
So what maybe another way to think about it is Turner is engaging the reports and the analysis on behalf of Blue Oak. So if you were to remove Turner, right, Blue Oak would have to reach out and conduct the same report. They would most likely go to verifiable and reputable organizations to conduct that research and analysis. So we are engaging on behalf of Blue Oak to assess with the upfront cost related to that, but also related to the review and the expertise that our team has in looking at these sites before. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I would consider that that if you were to, again, if we were not involved, it would be the same process that Blue Oak would have to conduct on their own directly.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So Adele, I'm going to move you on. What I'd like you to, if you in the Google Doc, if you have I'd really like if you're knowledgeable about that, because I know many of our parents are. If you say I'd really like this process used, if you could put that in there, and then we can answer you as to whether or not that process is planned to be used or will be used, rather than waiting until after the report is done. So that will help us front load the answer for you.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your great questions.
Karen.
Hi, everybody. I'm having trouble with my camera. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with the camera. I'm just, I kind of find it interesting that everything that was been presented by the speakers is positive when there are so many concerns out there that have been expressed to Susan. And I'm feeling like, why weren't some of these addressed while we have someone here from Turner Agassiz to help answer these questions? I'm not going to ask a bunch of questions. I have a million questions. I think a lot of us do. I can't sit here and ask them all because, we're on a time thing. We're running out of time. But there are a ton of questions that have already been submitted, and I'm just concerned that why weren't some of these answered when we have our panel here that could answer them for us? I mean, I just kind of feel like you guys painted a really pretty picture of what you want, but left us hanging, all the parents that are really questioning this site right now. And I'm just really concerned about that. So
so Karen, part of the issue with that is the questions that have been presented are fairly technical as far as the effect of the site and so on. And we do not at this time have that technical expertise in the room. And as my initial Parents Square post stated, we really wanted to have, and we'll have another meeting after the assessments are done and the tests. But this was really to kind of front load the questions here so people understood where we were coming from in getting to this site, and then moving forward later when we can answer those more detailed questions that you're asking. Okay.
Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. I just kind of wish that maybe
I can't give you answers, Karen, if I don't have them.
right. No, I understand that. And I'm not asking for you to give me answers that you don't have. I just feel like maybe a little blurb in your presentation stating, I know everybody has a ton of questions and we will get to them, but we can't do it now because kind of thing would have been helpful. At least to myself. That's all.
Thank you, Karen. I feel Susan did start the meeting with that very clearly. Do you have a question that we can answer or can attempt to answer at this time?
No, I'll just put my questions in the Google Doc.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brandy, I see you up there, but I want to give the option to the room first, and then I'll come back to you, okay? We have time.
Curious on the ownership structure for this property, particularly situation. That's interesting.
So with using the Measure K fund.
So Susan, can we just repeat the question?
Oh,
just to make
sorry.
sure that our people at home, since the microphones is there.
Elizabeth was asking about the ownership structure of the property if and when we purchase it. So the first step is the use of the Measure K funds. Measure K would be used to purchase the ground property as we're looking at, and the setup on the ground. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I think I should turn this over to Charity because I'm starting to mumble. That means I don't know enough about it. Charity,
no, that's okay, Susan. The question was related to the proposed structure for owning the property. Is that right?
It was the ownership. Yeah.
Yes. So as Susan began, the district funds that are set aside for Blue Oak will be used to purchase the site. That means that the district would own the property, have fee title to it, and would then lease that property. This is one of the structures that we are leaning into, but the district would then lease the land to Blue Oak for the eventual development. Blue Oak and Turner, as Turner being the developer in this scenario, or any other developer, would then enter a development lease with Blue Oak to actually construct and improve the property to put the buildings and infrastructure in place. So we would need to, Turner as the developer would need to have a ground lease, as it were, with Blue Oak and by way of the district to affect the development of the project. Does that clarify?
Why don't you explain also the long-term purchase process for Blue Oak?
Yes. So part of, and that's getting into a little bit more of our development model. So our financing structures, where we are not a bank, as I believe Chelsea mentioned earlier, the challenges of securing capital up front for a development project, we're structured in a way that allows us to lease to own, basically offering a charter school the option to rent up front And that requires a long-term lease that is put in place. Again, that would be the development lease, which would outline very transparently and clearly the terms of the lease payments that would be made, the actual development work that we are agreeing to, and the timeline under which we would deliver the project. The lease structure, that long-term lease structure, includes a purchase option for the development and the improvement that would be conducted by Turner as a developer. And that purchase option is structured to be between years 4 and 5 of the long-term development lease. And so basically between month 37 through month 60 of the lease term, Blue Oak would then have the opportunity to secure long-term financing, whether through a tax-exempt bond issuance, or it could be bank financing, CDFI, to essentially purchase the interest that Turner has in the development of the project, and then have permanent ownership of the site long-term. We have found that this lease-to-own structure has been helpful for charter schools, whether it's single-site operators or schools that are expanding into new areas, to be able to move appropriately, and many times if they need to move quickly in the real estate market, to be able to secure their long-term home and develop, basically settle in that space, allow for enrollment to grow if it's a newer school, and settle, stabilize, so that by year 4 and 5, they're in a really good position to secure a great interest rate in the market for that financing.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? What's that? Go ahead.
Your approximate for purchase option, given the 3 lanes in Measure K, what would be that approximate expense of that 4 years out?
I don't have a good answer for that at this point. She asked if at year 4, what our cost would be from year 4 on out, and I don't have those details available right now. Okay, any other questions from the floor? Christina?
I'm a little bit surprised by the structure. We weren't informed beforehand that it had to be a question model, so that's a little bit shocking, I think, for everybody involved here tonight that we're planning to speak. I did prepare a statement, and I gave it to everybody here, and I also emailed it out to the parent company. Disclosure. Because parents deserve to know, and we're limited here in what we can. I'm concerned about, as you all know, I have a significant amount of experience in solid waste, and I'm very concerned about the site being chosen as the former burned down site. The testing that was done in the final closure report had a qualifying statement stating that prior to development, further research would have to be done to make sure that the site was safe. Yet you're already at the point of applying for a conditional use permit that costs upwards of $12,000 for the city of Chico. So it seems like we're getting, prior to knowing whether this site is actually safe, we're getting really ahead of ourselves and then complicating things. The site is extremely small. 2.3 acres, and we're talking about adding a preschool on top of it.
So did you have a question?
I do have a question.
Okay, good.
The question is, how are we complying with Title V? And what is the structure of Turner Agassi in terms of what's their profit margin at the back end of this? Because we're avoiding eminent domain. We could use eminent domain to purchase a property, but we are using Turner Agassi through at least a lease back, and it's well known if you do any kind of Google research that Turner Agassi makes a ton of money off these projects, and they call themselves a social impact investment firm, but I'm not sure whether this will really work for Blue Oak. So how are we going to comply with Title V and making sure that the site is safe, that it's within the is within the site requirements, which for a 6-room classroom, it says that the site should be 3.8 acres. That's for 6 classrooms. We have how many? 10 plus 2 more.
Charity, can you answer that, or should we put that on the to be answered list? All right, we've got that question. Anyone else on the floor here? Oh, I can try.
I took some notes.
Okay, would you?
Christina, thank you for your research and the effort that you've put into this, because the due diligence is a collaborative effort. And what I heard you ask is, how are we sure that we're complying with Title V? And that includes safety and your concerns about the high voltage power lines nearby, and the recommendation of 3.8 acres for even 6 classrooms, and we have more than that. You were interested in why we're not going with eminent domain and why we're choosing Turner Agassiz, and you want clarification and transparency on the profits that they may benefit from in helping us in this endeavor.
Yes, and all of the sites that I looked at, like Turner Agassiz itself, exemplifies, it relied on school growth to be able to purchase the property at that point of the option to purchase. Further, with SB 740, there's a limit that the lease to purchase you can't buy down through a lease. So you're paying the same amount that you would have. You're paying the value of the property in 4 to 5 years, not taking into consideration any lease payments that you've made until then. So we're getting ourselves really into further bad financial shape rather than resolving it.
So I hear a clarifying question of, if that 4 to 5 year leasing option or purchase option or bond option, is that feasible if their model is based on growth and our intention is to solidify our current size? Thank you, Christina. Thank you.
Okay, it is 7:30. So I am going to close the meeting now. And again, anyone who has questions? All right, two more, sure. Go ahead, Brandy.
Okay, thank you. My question is, I know you're going to talk more about this specific site. My question has more to do with, while we're looking to see if this actually is a good fit for us and making sure all the testing is done, are we still actively looking for other potential sites as that may work better for us, seeing as how, who knows how long this will take, and if a potential site came up, we may miss it, lose it. So are we still actively looking while doing this, or is our actively looking on hold until we figure out whether or not this works, which could put us back and potentially miss something?
We have been working, we have a real estate agent we're working with. We're continuing to look at some new sites as well, or other possibilities.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
And Ashley.
Hello. Karen touched on it a little bit beforehand, but I know that we just started the formal due diligence process. How long can we expect for that to take before we will have those test results? And what is the transparency on that? I understand some things are in closed session, but I think that most of the parents would needs to feel included in some sort of input on that. So what can we expect as parents as far as communication going forward?
Any reports that we receive will work through Turner Agassiz at this point, or Turner Impact, and will be shared with the community. We're no longer in a closed session, and we're not currently in a closed session environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, and how long did we have an estimate?
Timeline on testing is 4 to 6 weeks to complete the testing and prepare the reports to be ready to be shared with us.
Thank you.
Yes, the intention is prior to parent conferences, and thank you for the timeline, and Thanksgiving break. All right, with no further hands up, I will go ahead and thank you all for attending and listening and spending your evening with us. Thank you.